right, we are thrilled to have on this podcast an excellent guest, Doree Shafrir, who is the co-host of the Forever 35 podcast, co-host of Matt and Doree's Excellent Adventure podcast, and author of Startup, a Novel, is here to talk about the phrase Generation Catalano. Hello, Doree. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing so well. I mean, obviously, we're going to talk about more than just that phrase, but you wrote this article in 2011.
Yeah.
My How Time Flies.
I
for Slate,
know.
titled Generation Catalano. And it's perfect that we're talking about this because we are right in the midst of another sort of generation battle going on with the whole like okay boomer conversation, and everyone's retreated to their little generational corners. And once again, I am grateful to be left out of the skirmish because you and I belong to this gap generation, Generation Catalano.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about how you define this particular generation?
Sure. So I defined it as kind of Carter babies. Anyone born between January 1977 and January 1981. And in the article that I originally wrote for Slate, I talked about how I felt neither a millennial nor a Generation Xer, and that we identified, my cohort identifies with some of Generation X's cynicism and kind of suspicion of authority, but we were too young to really be of the singles reality bites generation, and we also didn't feel as I described it as organization man-like conformity that millennials craved, which I don't think is entirely fair to millennials. But there was just something about the millennial generation that really didn't sit right with me either. And I had tweeted about this at the time in 2011, and so many people responded, and I realized that this was it was not just me.
Yeah. And I guess I technically fall just outside your range because I'm October 1981, but I'm going to claim it anyway.
Yeah, we'll allow it.
and what's great, so our mutual friend Danielle Nussbaum tweeted at you this phrase Generation Catalano, and then you picked up that ball and ran with it with this like great Slate article that I recommend you all read if you haven't, about this generation, its feelings. The way that I think of it sometimes is a Gen X sensibility with like a millennial experience sort of combined. But yeah. It's I don't identify with, not that everyone's experience is the same, but I don't identify with the broad definitions of millennial, and I don't identify with the broad definitions of Gen X. And sometimes when I tweet about this, people are like, you're just an old millennial and you refuse to admit it. And I'm like, well, maybe, elder millennial, fine. But I like this idea of this weird little gap generation. And I love the idea of, Danielle suggesting Jordan Catalano as the name for it is classic Danielle. But the reason I like it so much is because My So-Called Life is such this little time capsule, because it's only 19 episodes, because it like didn't, people who write about TV and love TV honor My So-Called Life, but it didn't have that like huge cultural explosive impact the way that Dawson's Creek did. But for the people that it like landed with, it stuck with. You know?
Yeah, totally. And it's funny because this piece, more than anything else I've ever written, just keeps coming back around, because every year it seems, or even every few months, someone around my age is like, I don't feel like I'm Generation X, but I also don't feel like I'm a millennial. And then, a couple of years ago, the term Xennial came into vogue, and then someone also defined us as the Oregon Trail generation.
Right.
So whether or not people had actually like read my piece, it did seem like there was just something about our little micro generation that really does seem to ring true for a lot of people.
I think one other thing, and people who study this much closer than I have will have smarter things to say about it, but it has to hinge a lot around technology and the internet, right? It's like we grew up ish with the internet. You know what I mean? I remember my first chat room going into, I was like in 6th grade, but we weren't like born into a world where the internet was really like such a thing.
Totally.
So more than Gen X, we have a facility with the internet because we were like fungible enough when it came around that we could just like absorb it. But we weren't like millennials where we never lived in a time before it. You know what I mean? And that's part of the cusping aspect, I think.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, I remember coming home from college and seeing my sister, who's 7 years younger than me, on Instant Messenger, AOL Instant Messenger, and just like IMing with, you know, dozens of people at a time. And I was like, what is happening? Like when I was 11 or 12, you know, we were doing 3-way calling, but
the height of technological innovation.
Exactly.
I remember that. Yeah.
And I didn't get my first email address till I was in college. So, you know, I remember being a tween and teen, and there were like CompuServe and Prodigy chat rooms. But we didn't have that at my house. I had a friend who had it, and he was like one of the only people who had it. So it was definitely around, but it hadn't permeated down to most of us, I would say.
Right. And I think this idea of being like, I was, once again, I'm like slightly, just ever so slightly too young for your definition, but I was in 8th grade, I believe, when My So-Called Life came out. But if you were in high school, when Angela was in high school, there's something else really sticky. I mean, I feel that way about Buffy the Vampire Slayer. There's something else like really sticky about a show where the character was in high school when you were in high school, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I was a senior in high school when My So-Called Life came out. I graduated high school in 1995. And so this hit very close to home for me. I mean, it you know, it wasn't obviously exactly my experience, but so much of what she went through and her kind of cultural touchstones and her struggles were things that I completely identified with.
And you mentioned this in your article, like, you know, and you and I are both, you know, white heterosexual females who, you know, grew up close enough to a suburb, you know, that we're not speaking for everyone's experience,
right?
But since we are like right in Angela's wheelhouse, you know, that's part of it. And I want to talk to you about the character of Jordan Catalano himself.
Yeah.
And we've talked a bit about this on the podcast. You and I wanted to talk specifically about this episode, Pressure. But just what do you think it is about Jordan Catalano that made him land so hard for so many women at the time?
So it's so funny. I mean, as with all of these things, like rewatching them now when I'm older probably than Angela's parents. And I remember when I originally watched My So-Called Life, like I also thought Jordan Catalano was super hot and, you know, the ultimate guy. And now I'm like, oh, of course I did, because he was just a total cipher. He was a nothing. Like he had no personality. His personality was being aloof. And of course that was what was appealing to me. I mean, of course he was very attractive, but it was that he gave Angela nothing, like literally gave her nothing. And it's kind of sad when I think that like that to me was like so attractive, but obviously that is what is attractive to, you know, when you're in high school, you don't know any better.
Well, I think this idea of being able to paste over whatever you think you want that person to be, you know, his blankness gives us a vacuum to fill up with whatever we desire.
Totally.
And I love that in this episode, I didn't realize it when we sort of like picked it to kind of anchor this chat to, but that the Hallie Lowenthal character sits there and tries to describe Jordan Catalano to Patty, and she's like, you know, she says, you know, not stupid, but lost. And you know, like a puppy basically that you want to take care of.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh God, oh no. This is like, it's such a damn, like Winnie Holtzman knew exactly what she's doing. And like, once we all grow up and look back at My So-Called Life, this is such a damning critique of like what we thought was interesting when we were teens. And it's true. It's very true.
Genius. It's so genius.
What do you think? What do you make of in this episode? There's a little bit of mirroring between Graham and Jordan, which I find interesting. Specifically, that like scene where he opens the door and they do a thing where they both put their hand behind their head and kind of like look at each other.
Yeah.
What do you think? The show is getting at there with the Graham and Jordan reflection.
Well, I mean, I think they have a sort of obvious mirroring of it when Graham and Angela's mom are sort of struggling with their own sex life. And Graham never pressures her into sex, but there is that scene when he pops in the video cassette that Sharon had brought over, with the like sex instructional tape. And he's really excited because he thought she had brought it home, and she's sort of like, what? No, that wasn't me.
What's interesting is I think specifically that moment where Graham's talking to Patty and he's like, because our sex life has become routine and boring or whatever, he's echoing whatever the routine and mechanical, something like that, whatever the tape says. And Patty, like, to her credit, and I'm always, this is another beauty of My So-Called Life, right? You rewatch it later and you're like, man, Patty was great and I didn't appreciate her enough. But she has this moment where she just goes, that really hurts my feelings. And which is like, a lot of us never find the maturity to just say it like that, not really nastily or even overly emotional, just sort of like, hey, what you said hurt my feelings.
Totally.
And I think of like when Jordan's talking to Angela and he says something like, unless you're abnormal or something like that, right? And she gets really upset and walks away because she can't say like, that hurt my feelings. But she's on her way. Like, you see Angela, I think, as someone who could grow into a Patty, and Patty as someone who I would want Angela to grow into. I think Patty is really great in so many ways. But she's not quite there yet. And so I just think that's a really interesting mirroring as well.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point.
And I wanted then to talk to you about the Brian Krakow of it all, because this is an interesting episode where we get Angela getting to like check in with almost every one in her age group. Ryan is not able to be a friend to Angela in this episode, but like she checks in with Sharon, she talks to Ricky, and then she talks to Brian. And there's this really interesting part of her conversation with Brian where he's yelling at her and she doesn't do anything, and he's like, well, don't just take it, give it back to me. Like, this is our relationship, is we yell at each other. That's like what I get out of this, right? But like, Brian is Jordan's sort of opposite in terms of he's just so Brian. Yeah. Jordan slips and defies explanation, and Brian is just like exactly Brian all the time. I think that's fascinating.
Yeah. And I mean, again, I feel like it was like Winnie Holtzman had like a telescope into my brain, because I feel like I did go through this thing where it was like, oh, the like sweet, available, earnest guy who's showing me who he is interested in me. But I would rather go for the Jordan Catalano character. And I mean, I think a lot of us go through that. It's not an uncommon thing. But like that scene when Jordan brings back Brian's bicycle, just like kind of breaks my heart. Brian's like, well, that's actually my bicycle. Like Brian is just like clearly like in so much pain about this and knows what a dick Jordan is, but just has no leg to stand on, kind of.
Yeah. The best he can do is just be like, well, I don't know if she's home, when he knows exactly that she's home, because just talk to her.
Totally.
It's interesting that the episode ends with Angela riding Brian's bicycle again, right?
Yeah.
Like with her hands off the handlebars, versus it starting with her riding Jordan's, like in driving Jordan's car, feeling really uncomfortable doing it, and then her happy and free, like on Brian's bicycle. What do you think Winnie is trying to tell us about these two sort of vehicular moments?
That's a really good point. And then she has that VO at the end when she's on the bike and she says, I wrote this down. People always say how you should be yourself, like yourself is this definite thing, like a toaster. Every so often I'll have a moment when being myself and my life is just like enough. And that is the moment when she's on the bicycle.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think it's pretty obvious what Winnie is saying. But we have to go through a few more episodes of heartache in this season, of course.
It's funny because, I mean, I think what's clear, and I think Winnie Holtzman has said as much, and I don't think it's a spoiler for first-time watchers to say that, like, that she kind of thought of Angela and Brian as, like, an end game, or at least a high school end game, maybe not a, like, they're going to get married or something, but that Brian is the better match for her.
Oh, totally.
They went to go see The Bicycle Thief together. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Like,
Totally.
Brian is her match, and Jordan is like who she wants, and that's the story of a lot of people's lives.
Well, and you kind of get the sense at the end of this episode, like on some level, Angela knows that.
Yeah.
And she knows that, like, Brian allows her to be her true self, whereas with Jordan, she has to be this person who she thinks Jordan wants her to be.
I would love to talk to you about this episode and its treatment of sex. It's interesting to try to remember how sex was treated as a, like, teenage subject matter on shows for teens at the time. And there's a couple things that I really clocked in this episode. One is the, like, concern about both birth control and even more so, I think, STDs, which is just, like, so prevalent on our mind with the AIDS crisis and the HIV in the early mid 90s. So more so than I think shows do these days, that like conversation about, like, and a sponge.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like,
that really stuck out to me too.
Yeah. And then sex is not a cautionary, like, vilification of sex at all. It's not trying, the takeaway message of this episode is not teens should not have sex. It's like sex should be treated with some consideration. And I think you get a lot of that in the conversations with, like, Ricky and Sharon. And that the only time that sex is bad is when it's, like, non-consensual or before someone is ready, or some of what Sharon says about after with Kyle. All of that. So
I mean, I think, well, first of all, the stuff about protection and the AIDS crisis, I mean, AIDS doesn't get mentioned by name in this episode, but again, as someone who was in high school in the early and mid 90s, I mean, AIDS was everywhere. Just the fear of AIDS was everywhere. And as a high schooler at the time, I can tell you, like, we were all, at least I was very paranoid about AIDS, and I wasn't having sex. And, like, but it was everywhere. And I think part of the reason I was so scared of sex was because of AIDS. It was just so, like, beaten into our heads that, like, you could have sex one time and not only would you get pregnant, but you would also get AIDS. And I think we see a little bit of that seeping into this episode for sure. And then the conversation with Sharon I thought was really interesting. And I feel like you don't really get those nuanced conversations on teen shows now, where Sharon, like, she enjoys sex, but she's also like, it changed things. And I appreciated how the episode kind of explored that gray area.
Sharon is such a good friend in this episode, and in, like, all episodes, honestly. It's interesting because I'm trying to think of, like, contemporary. I know I keep going back to Dawson's Creek. I know that was a couple years later, but I think something that you point out in this article you wrote for Slate is the idea that the teen shows that came a generation after, like, the WB era, like Gossip Girl or Pretty Little Liars or even the OC, stuff like that, the teens it's just adult soap opera with younger players. They're not trying to do anything remotely approaching an authentic teen experience. This is, adults. So sex is it's not treated that way, I think, in those shows. It's just like, of course you have sex because 20-somethings have sex and we're just pretending these teens are 20-somethings. You know what I mean? So.
I actually think that in a weird way, 90210 was a more authentic representation of being a teenager and being a high schooler than these shows that came later. Even though, the actors on the show were all, like, in their 20s. I do have this recollection of sex being approached in a way that felt more authentically adolescent.
Donna, like, being a virgin and that being like something that she wanted to hold on to, or I remember, I distinctly remember, and I don't know why, but when Brandon Walsh, played by Jason Priestley, loses his virginity to, I believe, Emily Valentine. I think that's all true. He plays In the Mood, the like Glenn Miller or whatever, like jazz thing, and is like rolling around his room on his chair, and Jim and Cindy Walsh are downstairs and they're like, in the mood, huh? Like kind of. That's my memory. Those are some of my memories of how sex was treated on.
That's really funny.
Know. But yeah, I think, like I think it's what I was worried about watching this, remembering when it was set, was that it would be like a very episode of the week about sex, and that's just not what the story Winnie Holzman is interested in telling. You know what I mean? She's like, I'm not here to shake my finger at teens who are having sex, but I'm here to talk about like taking it seriously, both for your physical health and for your mental and emotional health as well.
Yeah, but what's so funny is like, I also think she's doing something really funny and clever in that, Jordan is the one who's pressuring Angela into having sex, this more quote unquote adult thing to do. But emotionally, he's such a child. Right. Like in that conversation that they have when they're like, I guess, breaking up. And she says, it's sort of like when you were letting me drive your car, and I loved it. It made me feel really powerful, but also really terrified. Like I wasn't ready for that much freedom, which is like this very vulnerable, honest thing to say, right?
Yeah.
And his response is, well, you should know I won't hold it against you if your name ever comes up.
Yeah, I know. And then she treats it as like a really cool thing. And I'm like, oh, like the bar is right on the floor and he managed to like slightly step over it.
It's so true. And then the other thing that stuck out to me as like someone viewing this, who is no longer a teenager, was that line when Jordan says, when he gets angry at Angela for lying to him about why she had to leave the party. And he says, well, you can think what you want about me. I never lied. And I remember at the time being like, yeah, he's right. He didn't lie. He was only ever honest with her about like what he wanted. And now I'm like, what a dick. Like, who cares? Like, of course she lied to you because you would not leave her the fuck alone,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, like, that's the thing is like when I'm watching Angela lie, about Rayanne or whatever, there's a part of me that goes like, oh man, you shouldn't have lied. You should just say how you feel. And then I'm like watching him physically back her into a corner in that house. And I'm like, do whatever you need to get out of there, Angela. Lie
exactly.
If you need to. It's fine.
Yes.
You're so uncomfortable. I like Sharon makes a good point when she's like, you should talk to Jordan because you have this tendency to like shut people out. And you're like, yeah, we get it. Yes, Sharon, we know you're talking about you. Right. It's a good line to say, but like, and so yeah, you want her to communicate with Jordan, but at the same time, I'm like, I want to judge you for these lies, but I can't because you're scared and you don't know what to do. So if you need to lie to get out of it, you do you, Angela. Yeah, let's see. What else do I want to say about this episode of My So-Called Life and sex and all of it? I mean, I'm just wondering if there are any thoughts that you've had either since the article or in general about how this show is not only like a reflection of a time that we lived through, but did it help shape us in any way, in a lasting way, this show?
I mean, I think it helped shape our micro generation for sure. I don't know how much of an influence it had kind of more broadly. And I don't have a sense at the time of who was watching it. Like, was it just me and the people around my age? Like, I don't know. I do feel like I watched it with my mom though. Like I have that vague memory. Also, I didn't have a TV in my room. So I either had to watch it in my parents' room or in the den. Those were the only two places that we had TVs. And I feel like I watched it in my parents' room. And so I just wonder if if I had those conversations with my mom, as I was watching it, I realized I'm not answering your question, but I'm sort of
No.
like remembering this as I'm saying it.
Well, an interesting phenomenon, we talked about this a little bit, but like it was obviously like an underwatched show when it was on. The ratings weren't great. It's one of the reasons why it was canceled. But what's also true is that then MTV picked it up and started to rerun the heck out of it. And that's when I mean, like I remember kids watching it when it was on. I remember the petition that was circled to like keep it on.
Mm-hmm.
But I really remember more kids watching it when it was on in reruns on MTV. And taping it off MTV and sharing the VHS and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That was, or having getting the box set, and that was when it really, after Claire Danes had been in Romeo and Juliet and in Little Women. And so she was like something more than this unknown teen that had been cast in the show. I think that really, it was like too late to save the show, but
totally.
But yeah, okay. And then I want to ask you, I feel like I'm kind of grateful that the show only had one season, because I think it is every time I watch an episode, I'm like, this is the best episode. No, this is the best episode.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a perfect little gemstone of a season of television. Do you wish there were more? I just worry that they would have had like a bad season 2, and then it would have been like, and then we would be like, oh, remember that first perfect season of My So-Called Life or something like that, rather than remember that perfect show, My So-Called Life.
I mean, I hear what you're saying, but think about like Friday Night Lights had a horrible second season.
Really did.
And then yet, went on to have
Yeah.
a few more really great seasons. And I'm glad that we have so many episodes of Friday Night Lights. Like I do wish there were more episodes of My So-Called Life. Especially since, so many crappy shows get to have so many seasons.
All right. Is there any, and then, well, I guess, I don't know if this is like too touchy of a subject to ask you about, but one of the things that we've been struggling a little bit with is like trying to consider Jordan Catalano without like the Jared Leto of it all. And I don't know if you have any experience watching the show now, like knowing more about who Jared Leto is or became, and if that sort of changes the way that you view Jordan now.
Well, I'll tell you, it makes me regret the Generation Catalano moniker. I mean, I've thought about that a lot. Like, oh, that kind of sucks. That like, the name of the generation it's tainted because he turned out to be like a total scumbag. But yeah, it is kind of, it's hard not to think about. I'll say that when I watch him.
Kind of trying to do it's hard when they have the same face, but I'm kind of trying to do a like separate the art from the artist thing, not quite in the same way, but just sort of like try to consider Jordan Catalano as a fictional creation, Winnie Holtzman's fictional creation, versus Jared Leto as a deeply problematic like human being.
Yeah.
It's not the same as like watching, I don't know. Anyway, it's all complicated and we all have to draw our line somewhere. But for me, I mean, and especially since watching My So-Called Life now, I'm not sitting there going like, Jordan Catalano, what a dreamboat.
Totally,
I am saying like, very handsome, but oh my God, what a mistake.
Yes.
This whole thing is. So.
Yes. Which Winnie Holtzman knew all along.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Is there any? Well, let me ask you this question. We have a recurring segment on the show called Best Use of Flannel, where we talk about like we think the best flannel of the episode. Since I didn't ask you to pick out like a best use of flannel, I'm wondering if you have like one iconic piece of My So-Called Life costuming or clothing that like you covet, that you think is the greatest piece of clothing on the show.
Well, Angela has like a plaid baby doll dress that I definitely owned. Like, I mean, that was the other thing too, is like, I don't know if I was influenced by her clothes or if her wardrobe was just so accurate that it was what I, and like a lot of the other teenagers I knew were wearing. But it was eerily accurate, I will say.
Yeah, it's once again, it's a chicken and the egg situation.
Right,
I don't know
totally.
much the show, but I do love something that I read that I didn't know obviously at the time was that I guess the costumer like created a closet for all of them and
Oh,
just
cool.
pulled from that closet rather than like, Angela gets a new outfit every week. She has these pieces that they match throughout the season, and it makes her seem so much more authentically a teen.
Yes.
Like, you know.
Yes. Oh, that's so
Yeah.
clever that they did it
Yeah.
that way. I definitely was influenced by Angela's hair color. Like, I feel like I definitely dyed my hair like a very similar shade not long after the show aired.
A crimson glow. You gave
Yes,
yourself the old crimson glow
I
treatment.
did. Yes.
I did it. I think I talked about this before, but I did a crimson glow like streak in college, and that was the first time I had ever dyed my hair, and I don't
Nice.
think that I quite knew what had influenced me to do that, but I'm pretty sure that this is why.
Oh, definitely. I
So,
mean, that's the other thing too. Like rewatching it is I kind of think about how many things it's consciously or subconsciously picked up style wise from that show.
is there anything on right now? I know that you're a new mom. Maybe you don't have like a ton of time to watch a bunch of stuff, but is there anything on right now that you think is coming even close to capturing what My So-Called Life captured for us?
It's hard to say because like I watch things like Sex Education and I'm like, oh, that that must be what it's like to be a teenager now, but I actually have no idea. Like I don't know if that's a show for adults who
Right.
who want to think that they know what being a teenager is like, or if that's a show that teens are actually watching. You know what I mean?
I feel like teens aren't watching TV at all. They're watching
YouTube
YouTube
or TikTok or whatever.
TikTok. They're watching themselves.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like they're watching like
totally. They're not
yeah.
They're not watching like a 40-year-old's interpretation of what a teenager is. They're watching a teenager's interpretation of what a teenager is.
Yeah. And that's kind of heartening because I think that era, that like Pretty Little Lies era, like not that I'm not knocking Pretty Little, I never watched the show, but I'm sure it's like super entertaining, or the OC or like all of that stuff, like super entertaining, but like that aught stretch of that's what teen shows are. Like,
oh, I just thought of a show actually.
Yeah.
What about Riverdale?
Oh. But isn't Riverdale in the vein of like, aren't those kids all acting like 40-year-olds?
Yes, but I wonder if that is a show like I feel like that is a show that actual teens watch.
Yes.
But maybe not as a reflection of themselves per se.
Yeah, it's
because it is
hard
so
to know.
soapy.
If you're a real teen listening to this, which I don't think we have any teens who listen to this,
but if you are, Forever 35 literally yesterday got an email from someone who said she's 13 years old and that she listens to the show. So you don't.
That's amazing.
You never know.
Never know. Okay, if you're a real teen, tell us what all the teens are watching other than TikTok. All right, Doree, where can people find you if they want more of your Catalano or non-Catalano based insights?
Well, they can find my podcast, Forever 35, wherever you get your podcasts, and same with my other podcast, Matt and Doree's Excellent Adventure. I am on Instagram at Doree, Doree, and on Twitter at Doree, and my website is doree-shafrir.com.
Perfect. Well, thank you again so much.
Thank you.
For giving me a thing to call myself that allows me to sidestep all generational infighting.
Yes, which is like peak our microgeneration.
Yes.
Just leave us alone, okay?
We don't want anything to do with it.
Exactly.
At least you got in some driving practice.
Yeah.
Just, don't take your turns too wide or anything.
Hey, Michael.
Hey, Tom.
Okay, so you want to tell him, or you want me to tell him?
No. I got this. I want people out there.
Yeah.
People, lean in. Get close. Listen, here's the deal.
We have big news.
We got monumental news. We got snacktacular news.
Yeah, after a brief hiatus, my good friend Michael Ian Black and I are coming back.
My good friend Tom Cavanaugh and I are coming back to do what we do best.
What we were put on this earth to do.
To pick a snack.
To eat a snack.
And to rate a snack.
Scientifically.
Emotionally.
Spiritually.
Mates is back.
Mike and Tom Eat Snacks is back.
A podcast for anyone with a mouth.
With a mouth. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
There are names that echo in the world of true crime, names that carry unanswered questions. Oakley Carlson, a 5-year-old girl who deserved safety, protection, and love, yet the system built to protect her failed, and Oakley disappeared. Her community still calls her name.
Or Ellen Greenberg, found in her locked apartment with 20 stab wounds, a case declared a suicide. But how does a locked apartment tell 2 different stories at once?
These are not just cases we have covered. They are people. They were loved, and they mattered.
Their stories deserve to be told with care, with depth, with truth.
I'm Ashley.
And I'm Ricky.
We are the husband and wife duo behind Crime Salad.
Every week we uncover stories of the missing, the silence, the misunderstood. We ask the questions that were left behind. We refuse to let these stories be forgotten.
Because behind every case is a family holding on, a community seeking answers, and a story that deserves to be heard.
We invite you to listen to Crime Salad,
your healthy portion of true crime, wherever you get your podcasts.